And I got a couple stories for you to kind of crack the topic. The topic's going to end up in your hands. You tossing it around in your conversations, if you so choose. And in fact, today we're going to crack something brand new open. As a gentleman came to me with a very good idea last week, that we just allow these conversations to spiral out of this place. And so there's going to be a blog site launched today that corresponds to each week here. You can go and drop your 2 cents there online, and fame and fortune and all the credit you deserve await you. And I'll point out that at the end of today. First story I want to tell you is about this gal in the middle, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant in the crowd there. She's pretty easy to pick out. Her name's Nicole. She is, in some sense, the other half of the staff of Kingsbridge, which runs these events on Sunday afternoon. She's in Uganda there, but she spent quite a bit of time in South Africa. South Africa now is almost 1/4 of the population with AIDS, HIV/AIDS. 1/4. So, I mean, you just have to look around a small room like this, and there's a heck of a lot of people who are really on the edge. South Africa is a nation, in some sense, spiraling out of control, and there's a whole political discussion right there. She traveled from South Africa to Uganda, and you saw the president of Uganda being referred to there. A nation, the only nation in Africa that's actually seen the tide against AIDS turn. They're starting to win the battle. And it's been the coordinated efforts of regular Joes and government officials and everything working together to start the tides turning, to turn this thing around. So she's seen both sides of this, but what I want to tell you about her is simply that she's just a regular person. Somebody who a couple years ago was sitting in this room. Somebody who actually just watched Oprah on TV and heard about what's going on in sub-Saharan Africa with AIDS and went, man, I can't let this go. I got to do something. I got to find out something. So she just went, and a couple of years later, she's still there. She'll be back again in May. We'll get her up here to talk about it. And she's just encountered a lot of different stories, struggles, and is sort of ill-equipped to do much, but is doing what she can. The other story I want to tell you is my wife. A bit before we got married, she spent a year in Africa on a medical ship. Not dealing so much actually with the crisis of AIDS at that point, but just traveling port to port, 3 months in each city, across 3 different cities. Rolling into town, coming from this city where we complain about long emergency room waits and the population crunch in this city and all these sorts of things, coming from that background, rolling in a hospital ship into port in a country called Togo, entering into something they call screening days, which is when everybody in the city who has a medical need kind of comes to try to get those needs met, being absolutely overwhelmed because literally thousands upon thousands of people show up without any other medical opportunity for a handful of staff, a handful of doctors and nurses. And what they experience is this small fenced area where they're doing the screening, people literally passing their infants hand over hand into the hands of strangers in a desperate attempt to get them into the hands of a doctor or a nurse who maybe, just maybe, can help them. Now, I'm a dad. I have little kids, and I'm paranoid about handing them off to anybody, let alone passing them over the fence and just hoping that they'll be caught as they move, because those kids won't live unless something happens. You track to the other side of the fence, and there's doctors and nurses there, completely overwhelmed, with only a certain skill set and a certain amount of time and opportunity, having to turn literally hundreds upon hundreds of adults and children away with no other lifeline. And that's just happening every day. Day in, day out. How do you even begin to grapple with that kind of thing? Sitting here in the middle of Kensington on a Sunday afternoon. How do you wrap your mind around that? Why even attempt to suspend people's suffering when the enormity of the issue is so big, when it's so overwhelming? When you and I know that we're probably not going to affect political policy, that we're not going to change the economic landscape, just people, regular Joes trying to get by in our life. So why even attempt? Well, the first reason is really just a marketing ploy, in a sense, used in the service of something bigger and better than marketing. It's the big name WASPs, Bono, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, with fame and fortune attached to them, pointing out nameless, worried African suffering people. We've all encountered this, and maybe that's your only point of engagement with these issues. But I think it's a worthwhile one. Here's some thoughts on that.
Bono gave NBC News extraordinary access to his traveling operation, perhaps the largest Africa aid effort ever mounted by any individual. On the flight from Mali to Ghana today, he talked about his love of the place and the people.
My goal, my job is to put myself out of a job so I can be in a rock band in all good conscience, get on with my spoiled, rotten, rock-star life and drink a martini.
This effort, he says, is to use and leverage his own name. Whether it's getting the G8 nations to give more money, lobbying President Bush, partnering with evangelical Christians, or getting Americans to care about the 9,000 plus people who die every day in Africa.
That's often our point of contact. We go, man, I respect so-and-so, I respect this guy, or that person, or hey, they're just talented, and they catch our attention. And we go, well, maybe that's worthwhile, because I have some respect or interest in that person, and hey, that's good. And it actually makes a difference when you're rallying that many people together. But I'll tell you where that goes up to the next level. It's when you hit the reality of relationship. Now, I don't know about your life. I don't know how insulated your life is or how wide open your life is. But I'll tell you this, it's pretty hard to avoid hitting folks who are suffering. It's pretty hard to avoid it in a city with 3,500 homeless people now. It's pretty hard to avoid it even in gated, middle-class, comfy neighborhoods. Every now and then somebody puts a gun to their head. Every now and then somebody cries himself to sleep. And much more often than not, people just silently grapple with life not working. And then they collide with somebody else. They meet somebody else across the world or here today, and you realize that other people are dealing with something even more. And it stretches you, and it draws you out of yourself. And it takes you, I think, to the final level, the next level, where miraculously, eventually, we're prodded to simply get over ourselves. And you know the weirdest thing about this is that the answer to all the quests of materialism, the answer to all the dissatisfaction and apathy and just not getting enough out of life that probably all of us are familiar with at one time or another in a city of affluence. The answer to it is, in some sense, this simple. We're a lot more narcissistic than we probably admit to. Whether we look in the mirror and hate ourselves, or we look in the mirror or love ourselves, we spend a hell of a lot of time looking at ourselves. And everything changes when you simply reach out, even a little bit. And even more changes when you start to reach up. Cracks open all the big questions of life. And it puts you in a place where all of a sudden you realize that you, just you, little old you, confused, struggling, uncertain, ineffectual you, makes a difference, is in the world for a reason. And that's something worth talking about. And when little old you, making a difference in the world, collides with suffering and struggle around the world and next door, an adventure begins, a struggle begins, a life story worth being told begins. And I hope maybe that begins or continues with a conversation here this afternoon. To that end, here's some questions, some stuff to talk about. And if you want to go further, there's a few places that will help you get involved in a greater way. And there's a lot more out there. I'm not shopping. I'm not trying to sell any given organization. I'm just saying, do something. Connect somewhere. If you want to continue this conversation beyond the folks you're gathered with, or you just kind of want to be quietly anonymous in having that conversation, this blog site that is being launched today, and you can jump in. You'll get the video of this afternoon, and you'll also get all the slides and everything, and you can just drop your comments there. All your profundity has a place to go.